Good evening, everybody. This is Terry Lathan, and I'm the chairman of the Alabama Republican Party. We're on the line a few minutes early tonight waiting for Dr. Ben Carson. He has been traveling today. We hear he is in Iowa. And after the call, he will be heading to Fox's The Kelly File. So we're going to have him on a tight time schedule while we wait. And if Dr. Carson gets on the line, he will hopefully interrupt me. I was going to share some quick facts, Carson facts for everybody. We're grateful that you're all here tonight to listen to Calling Alabama, which gives the opportunity for presidential candidates to get questions from Alabamians, good Republicans, and step into our world for a few minutes that's unfiltered.
Hello?
By Dr. Carson.
Yes.
Hey, this is Terry. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. We hear you're traveling today and just got off a plane and you're in Iowa.
Yeah, we've actually had a few events in Iowa today. Very exciting, big, enthusiastic crowds.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're all seeing that across the nation. So we have a lot of folks on our line tonight, Dr. Carson. We have several hundred Alabama Republicans. They're anxious to hear from you. We're actually in Alexander City tonight at the Tallapoosa County Republican Party meeting. We've got a packed house of people here in the room, and everyone's anxious to hear from the one and only Ben Carson, or as your Twitter account calls you, Real Ben Carson. So I'm going to give you the opportunity now, Dr. Carson, to say hello to the Republicans in Alabama, tell us a little about your story, and then we've got some great questions for you. We know you're on a tight schedule.
Okay. Well, welcome, everybody, and thanks for your interest and participation. As many of you know, I was a pediatric neurosurgeon. I was at Johns Hopkins for 36 years, retired in 2013, expecting to have a nice, peaceful, relaxing retirement, like most people have. But I think the good Lord had another plan for my life, and I find myself in this political arena, even though I'm not a politician. I have no intention of ever becoming a politician. But I do have a long history of solving very complex problems. And right now our nation has some very, very complex problems. Now, is it possible that they could be solved by traditional politicians? I guess it's possible. It certainly hasn't worked much well lately. And the stakes are so high. And I feel that if we don't get a grasp on the divisiveness that's going on in our nation, because as Jesus said and Abraham Lincoln repeated, a house divided against itself cannot stand, then we will. And we have to stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated. And if we don't get a grip in terms of our financial responsibility, we will destroy the future for those who follow us. And it's not just the $18.4 trillion in terms of the national debt. It is also the fiscal gap, which is the amount of money that we owe going forward in terms of unfunded liabilities versus the expected revenues. And that gap is getting bigger and bigger and is currently over $200 trillion. That's unsustainable. And it's going to absolutely cause a collapse if we don't do something about it in the relatively near future. And then our failure to take a leadership role on the world stage is another big problem, because as we vacate the leadership spots, that vacuum is filled by others who are not nearly as benign as we are. And we also have a situation where radical jihadists have a desire to destroy us and our way of life. And we're simply allowing them to continue to grow, to expand, while at the same time we're allowing our military to deteriorate and the morale in our military to fester. And as a result of that, we're placing ourselves in extreme danger in the future.
Well, it sounds like you're off to a good start, and I noticed you first mentioned God's plan for you, and oftentimes I think He does have plans and people don't listen, but obviously this is something passionate you feel very strongly about, and we thank you for stepping up. It's a big job, and I think America is listening to you, and we're very hungry and thirsty. I do have a few questions.
I can tell you that it wasn't something that I particularly wanted to do. I prayed long and hard about it. And finally, I just said, Lord, as long as you open the doors, I will go through them. And if you close them, I will gladly sit down. And so far, He is just opening door after door. In a recent couple of months, we've had over 185,000 new donations. And it's just phenomenal. Of course, that's what the pundits can't understand, and they keep saying, this can't be happening, and their heads are exploding. But they forgot about two very important factors, the people and God.
Well, I think any time you can throw pundits off, you're doing something right. Let's go ahead and start with our questions so we can get you to the Kelly file tonight. Teresa from Tuscaloosa County wanted to ask you, would you immediately review every executive order signed by President Obama and reverse them if they're not good policy for our nation? And what do you consider to be the most pressing issue of our time?
I would very quickly review all these multiple executive orders. The way things were set up, executive orders were there for a reason. When Congress was not in session or unable to address an issue and you needed a stopgap measure taken, it wasn't for the creation and execution of laws. And yes, I would go back and review and probably negate the vast majority of those things. In terms of what is the most pressing, I think it is our financial instability. The only reason that we can sustain the kind of debt that we have is because our currency is the reserve currency of the world, which means we can print money, which we're doing willy-nilly, and we should not be doing. We decoupled the dollar in 1971 from the gold standard. It is based only on our good name, faith, and credit. And if we, for some reason, are no longer the reserve currency of the world, we will have a tremendous collapse almost immediately.
Well, thank you for the answer. Dr. McCullough from Baldwin County, a fellow surgeon, has noted that Hillary Clinton is an attorney. And from one doctor to another, he asked, why is the training a doctor receives a possible better prerequisite for being president than the training received by an attorney? In other words, how does your experience as a doctor transfer over as well as an attorney would for president?
Interestingly enough, doctors and many others in scientific areas and technical areas are taught to make decisions based on evidence and facts. And many others who traditionally go into the political arena have a tendency to make their decisions based on their ideology. And that's very different. Just to give you an example of how someone who looked at facts versus ideology might consider something. Since the 60s, we've had a war on poverty. And we have spent $19 trillion trying to eradicate poverty. And what have we gotten for it? More poverty, 10 times more people on food stamps, welfare, out-of-wedlock births, broken families, crime, incarceration. Everything that it was supposed to get rid of is not only worse, it is much worse. Now, somebody who is looking at evidence would say, you know what, this is not working. Let's look at some things that have worked in the past. And somebody who is ideologically based would say, we just didn't do it enough. We need to do more. And you can see where the two things would lead you.
Well, there's an old saying about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and it sounds like that's something that you've got a grasp of very well. We have a question from Stephen, who's actually here tonight in Tallapoosa, and we're going to combine it with one from Mr. Charles of Lawrence County, Alabama. and it's regarding Obamacare. They would like to know, with the Supreme Court ruling today upholding parts of Obamacare, what is your strategy with regard to repealing Obamacare, and how would you address our health care situation?
Well, first of all, I think before we repeal it, we need to have something with which to replace it. And what I have advocated is a system that's based on health savings accounts, making them available to people from the day they're born until the day they die, at which time they can pass it on to their family, paying for it with the same dollars that we used to pay for traditional health care with now, although we wouldn't have to use as many, and giving people flexibility to shift money within their health savings account within their family. So let's say you were $500 short for a sophisticated mammogram. Your husband could give it to you out of his, or your daughter, or your cousin, or your uncle, or your grandmother. Anybody in the family gives you enormous flexibility to cover almost anything that comes up. And then catastrophic insurance would only have to be used for catastrophic events. And the cost of it would be much lower because you don't have everything coming out of it. It'd be sort of like a homeowner's policy with a big deductible, which is a very different animal than a homeowner's policy with no deductible. And that basically makes every family their own insurance company. Also, you make it possible to buy the catastrophic insurance across state lines, which further reduces the cost. Now, that takes care of the vast majority of people and simplifies the system considerably. But what about the indigent? How are you going to take care of them? Well, how do we take care of them now? Medicaid. What's the annual Medicaid budget? $400 to $500 billion a year. Now, how many people participate? About a quarter of the population, 80 million people. 80 million into 400 billion goes 5,000 times. $5,000 for every man, woman, and child on average in the Medicaid system. What could you buy with that? Well, the concierge or boutique practice that rich people buy generally costs $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So we can put them all in a concierge practice and still have thousands left over to buy catastrophic insurance, which is much cheaper. Now, I'm not advocating that we do that. I'm saying that's how much money is allocated already. What if we spent it wisely and crafted a system whereby we could, in fact, give them a health savings account over which they have charge? Now, many in Washington would say you can't do that because, those people are stupid. They can't manage a health savings account. Are you kidding me? But of course, they always think that everybody's dumber than they are, which would be difficult. So they instead don't remember, the argument over food stamps. People said, you can't give people food stamps because, they can't manage them. They're too stupid. They'll go out and buy a porterhouse steak the first 5 days. Day 6, you'll see them out in the corner begging for food. Did that happen? Of course not. They learn how to buy rice and beans and corn and Hamburger Helper and to spread it out over the month. And, of course, they would learn to use their health savings account. Mr. Brown, who has a diabetic foot ulcer, instead of going to the clinic and blowing 5 times as much as it would cost to go to instead of going to the emergency room where it costs 5 times more, he would go to the clinic. Gets the same treatment in both places, but the emergency room, they patch him up and send him out. Clinic, they patch him up and say, now let's get your diabetes under control so you're not back here in 3 weeks with another problem. And you begin to teach him the whole concept of taking care of himself. And anything that the government ever advocates should lead people to independence and personal responsibility rather than dependency.
Absolutely, and that's probably a strength you have as a physician coming into the race for presidency, that you've lived this all your life, and you certainly understand some options that we might have as Americans. Let's move on to...
I should just mention,
sure,
the reason that I have so adamantly opposed Obamacare, not because it doesn't work and because it's not affordable, but because it fundamentally changes the relationship between the people and the government. Our government is built around the people, of, for, and by the people, with the government there to ensure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What the Affordable Care Act does is turns that on its head, and the government says, this is what we're doing. We don't care what you people think, and if you don't like it, too bad. That's not the way America was designed. And if we tolerate that, it will only be the beginning.
Yes, I sincerely doubt our founding fathers would sit down and with their struggles and wrote our documents and founded us. We're thinking that that's the way it's supposed to be. And in fact, it's supposed to be the exact opposite. And I'm very grateful that you mentioned that. We do have a state party member named Shelley from Lauderdale County, and she would like to ask, what is your plan to mend race relations in our country and to unite Americans on this topic?
Well, there are the purveyors of division who are rampant in our society today. They want to not let any insight that they can't capitalize upon to drive wedges in our society. And hence we have a war on women, race wars, religious wars, income wars, age wars, you name it, we have it. I think the bully pulpit is a great place from which to address what we have in common and our unity, and help people to recognize that we're all in the same boat. And if part of the boat goes down, the rest of it's going down too. For every single individual that we can keep from going on that path of self-destruction, it's one less person we have to be afraid of or protect our family from, one less person we pay for in the penal system or the welfare system, one more tax-paying productive member of society who may discover a new cure for cancer or a new energy source. We can't afford to throw any of them away, particularly when we only have 330 million people, and we're competing with China, who has 1 billion more, or India, who also has 1 billion or more. We obviously are going to have to develop, cultivate, and honor and cherish every single person that we have. And when we start investing in each other rather than demonizing each other, I think we will see a level of harmony that has not been seen here before.
Those are beautiful words, and I think America needs more words like those right now, actually. We have a retired major in the Alabama Air National Guard asking a question, and her husband is currently a pilot in the Alabama Air National Guard. Her name is Mary Scott. She's from Madison County, which is the Huntsville area. She would like to know, what experience and ideas do you have to make our country safer from terrorism?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that we are in danger. Sometimes when you look at what's going on, you think that they're just saying, oh, those are just problems going over in the Middle East, and we don't really have to worry about that. The fact of the matter is, this situation that's going on over there is very different than what was going on in 2003 when we invaded Iraq. One could argue that there was really no great national interest at that point, but there's a huge national interest now because these jihadists have sworn to destroy us and our way of life. That is their goal. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to stop them. We have a choice of letting them accomplish their goal or stopping them, and stopping them means destroying them. And that is the best way that we protect ourselves, is we get rid of them over there so they don't wind up over here, because I guarantee you they will be coming here. There's some of them here already. There are secret cells already setting up in this country. We have to use every resource available to ourselves in order to eradicate them. And that's really the plan, eradicate them or wait for them to eradicate us. Well,
the second option you mentioned is not on the table for America. We cannot let that happen. And sort of thinking about the border problem that we have wrapped around possible an entranceway for some terrorists into America, James from Cherokee County here in Alabama would like to know what your position is on securing our southern border.
Well, my position is that we have to secure all of our borders, not just the southern border, but the northern border and both coasts. Because it's not just people from Honduras we're worried about. It's radical Islamic jihadists who want to come in here and wreak havoc on our society. We have the ability to secure those borders. We have sophisticated electronic surveillance. We have drones. It doesn't just have to be a fence or a wall. We're much more sophisticated than that now. And we have the ability to do it. We just don't have the will to do it, but it is so vitally important. Now, we do have an illegal immigration problem, and we need to be mature enough to all recognize that that does exist. How do we stop it? Well, in addition to securing all the borders, we also have to turn off the spigot for the fountain dispensing all the goodies. You know, if they're not going to get benefits when they come here, including work, there won't be any reason to come here. And that's a very important, but it's a 1-2 punch. Turn off the spigot and solidify the defenses in terms of entrance. Now, that will take care of the influx, but what do you do with the 11 million, at least, who are already here? Oh, well, fully recognizing that some of them don't know any other place. It's the only place they know. Where are you going to send them back to? So I'm not sure that that's a viable option. However, making them or giving them a path to become guest workers, not citizens, but guest workers, so that they're officially registered, they get involved in paying their back taxes as well as paying their taxes going forward, simply allows them to move out of the shadows, does not give them voting rights, does not make them citizens. If they wish to obtain those privileges, they get in the back of the line with everybody else and go through the same process, because we have to honor all of those people who came here the right way. And we can't give somebody a special privilege just because they happen to have gotten here the wrong way. The other thing we have to bear in mind is that, you know, we're doling out, billions of dollars around the world in terms of aid to other countries, which is a fine and magnanimous thing to do if we had the money. But we don't have the money. You know, I talked a little bit about, you know, how much money we owe. It is horrible. And unless we address that problem, it's just going to add to the fiscal gap that is destroying us. But what I would do, instead of sending the money, and we do have to be compassionate, we can do what we're doing over in Cameroon, in Africa right now, allowing American companies to go over there. They have millions of acres of incredibly fertile land that they weren't appropriately taken advantage of. And our companies are helping them to develop the agricultural industry over there, which is producing a lot of food for Cameroon, but also producing a lot of food for our companies. So they're profiting. It's a win-win proposition. We should be doing the same kind of things in this hemisphere, south of our border, to create job opportunities and development in those countries, which also is beneficial to the companies in this country. A win-win situation without further depleting our treasury, which doesn't have any money in it anyway.
Well, it sounds like the old saying we know about teaching a man to fish instead of just giving a fish to eat every day so he can take care of himself and his family. And that is certainly something that we should invest in, and it looks like we are with folks like you are thinking that way. We have a question from Karen from Lee County, which is the Montgomery and the Auburn area. What are the essential leadership characteristics of the next president?
Well, I think courage is going to be very important, because we're going to have a very, very difficult fiscal situation staring us in the face. You know, most politicians absolutely refuse to talk about the fiscal gap, which is the amount of unfunded liabilities that we have, you know, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, governmental, departmental programs, versus the amount of expected revenue from taxes and other sources. And those numbers should line up perfectly evenly, input versus output, but instead we have a big difference between them. That big difference is, in fact, the gap. It is growing significantly. It is $211 trillion currently. So it makes our $18.4 billion that we owe in terms of national debt seem small. It's a huge reason that reason that politicians don't talk about it is because they want to get reelected. They can't get reelected if people know how irresponsible they've been. We are going to clearly have to do some things. We're going to have to adjust. You know, you look at Italy a few years ago, they had a fiscal gap even bigger than ours, not in total dollars, but proportional to their size. But in Italy, you could retire very early on full government benefits. So they significantly raised the retirement age, and they cut the benefits by 40%. It was painful. There was wailing and gnashing of teeth, but it put them back on the right fiscal road. The longer we wait to correct our fiscal gap, the more severe and draconian the things will be done to get us back in the right shape.
Well, Dr. Carson, we know you're on your way to Fox's Kelly File, and we want to thank you here in Alabama stepping in for a few minutes when you couldn't be here. We hope you will come this way. Actually, you've been in Alabama so much. I've heard you several times that we're about to make you an honorary Alabamian. You probably vote here. You've been here so much.
I'm coming back this weekend, too.
You're coming Sunday night in Birmingham. You certainly are, and we're letting people know about that. And before you get off the phone, we want to share with our guests. We've talked a lot of presidential things, but Dr. Carson in 2001, everybody, was selected by the Library of Congress as one of 89 living legends. He has been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush. It's the highest honor a civilian can receive, and he has 38 honorary doctorate degrees. And it has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the line.
If my wife were here, she would say, please tell her it's 68 honorary doctorate degrees.
68. Well, tell Candy that we will. Maybe that's Common Core math. I'm not sure. So we'll go to 68. I got a big laugh from our crowd here in Tallapoosa, Dr. Carson. So we're going to all go home now and watch you on the Kelly File. God bless, and thank you for your journey as you go to walk toward the presidency, a possible presidency of the United States from the Republican ticket.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. God bless.
Bye-bye.